Today, we are going to talk about malware. That includes, but not limited to, Trojans, worms, rootkits and backdoors, ADWARE, botnets, email and macro viruses, spyware and keyloggers, background mining apps, USB jackers, and ransomware. This is Ron Martino. Stay tuned. You probably know already that this type of malware takes its name from an ancient Greek myth called Trojan horse. A Trojan is a malicious piece of software encapsulated inside a legitimate piece of software. The idea behind that is very simple. The victim trusts the source that program was obtained from, and therefore is caught off guard. While modern operating systems have all types of security filters, firewalls, antiviruses, and lots of other security stuff, all of that is rendered effectively useless if the Trojan was voluntarily downloaded and installed by device owner along with another piece of software. How exactly does a Trojan end up inside a legitimate app? Well, a hacker just obtains a piece of original software, appends the virus body to it, and republishes it online. And because software marketplaces like App Store and Google Play run virus checks, in most cases, Trojans originate from various sites and torrents where cracked and pirated software is distributed. However, there's also a tiny possibility that a virus may have infected the vendor's server containing the original distribution. The server could have also been hacked, and authentic files could have been replaced by their infected copycats. What does a Trojan do once inside a user's device? In most cases, it runs before the installation of the main program. It puts its copy into computer's memory and runs it, and also modifies the startup scripts of your OS so it can resume operation whenever the system is rebooted. And after it's done, which is usually just a fraction of a second, it resumes the original installer, thus remaining unnoticed. And because Trojan is part of the same exe file as the installer, it does not need any additional permission to access sensitive data and do other naughty stuff around your system. A phishing app also aims to disguise as a genuine piece of software. However, it does not use a hacked copy of it to get into your system. Instead, it is completely rewritten from scratch by the hacker and only mimics its look and behavior. The purpose of a phishing attack is to trick you into believing that you are in fact interacting with authentic software and submitting your personal information to a legitimate party, whereas in reality, your data ends up on the scammer's server. Phishing started a while ago as fake websites. Due to the nature of HTML code, which is the markup language used to build websites, it's exceptionally easy to make an exact copy of someone's web page and redirect user input to another server. The only thing that would actually be different in this case is the website address in your browser. But who pays attention to that? Well, I do, especially when I enter sensitive data. And you should too, by the way. Whenever you have to enter your billing information, credit card numbers, always pay attention to the URL in the address bar of your browser. When smartphones came around, phishing took a new turn. This time, however, it came in the form of fake applications that people downloaded and installed on their phones. In most cases, the malware impersonated popular banking or investment applications. So, all cash deposited by the victim would be directed to the hacker's bank account. When Bitcoin gained popularity, scammers came up with fake crypto wallet applications. Your blockchain account is protected by a private key, which allows full access to all your crypto funds. So, once you entered your private key, the fake wallet would just suck all your bitcoins from your address. If you intended to buy crypto using this app, it would just steal your dollars. Because cryptocurrency did not have any legal status at first, reporting the scammer to the police was pointless. And due to anonymous nature of crypto, it was also impossible to find an intruder or track their IP. Speaking of crypto, if you're interested in how it works and how to safeguard your bitcoins, you can check out my video on blockchain, the link to which I will post in the description. So, how would you go about protecting yourself from Trojan and phishing attacks? First, you must avoid all unauthorized download sources, especially pirate websites and torrents. If it's a banking or an investment app you're trying to install, it would be a great idea to download it directly from company's website. Or you can always pay a visit to their office and have a real-world person install it on your smartphone for you. If the app is not on their website, use Google Play or App Store. Unfortunately, imposter apps can also make it there, but I will share with you a very simple trick you can use to make sure the app is authentic. Check its download count. If it's a large company, like Apple or eBay or any major bank, their app should count close to 1 million downloads. Usually, malicious apps get banned really fast, so it's virtually impossible for them to last long enough to reach 1 million downloads. Email isn't that popular among smartphone users. However, traditional computer viruses still use this method to infect a victim's computer. All email viruses have one thing in common. They either contain a file attachment or a link to a web server hosting malware. Back in the day, we used offline mail client software to read and send email. Because that was just a piece of code that ran on your computer, some email viruses attempted to exploit its vulnerabilities to run malicious code without any interaction with the user. So back then, you could actually get infected simply by checking your mail, even if you didn't click any link or open any attachment. With today's web-based mail clients, like Gmail for example, this type of attack is hardly possible. So, if you refrain from clicking anything within the infected message, you can pretty much safely view it. And if you are unsure who it's really from, you can always check it by using the Show Original feature. As we see, the actual sender of this message is this, and not this. And if you ask me, do people actually buy this rubbish in 2022? The answer is yes, they do. Otherwise, scammers wouldn't have spent their time and money setting up botnets and bogus websites. If you believe you've received a phishing message, use the Report Phishing option. This is actually the type of virus which commonly arise by email. And they catch most people off guard because they are just Microsoft Office documents. How could a word processor file or a spreadsheet possibly harm your computer? Well, turns out viruses can also be coded as macros, which is a kind of simplistic programs, also called scripts, originally intended to help automate common Office tasks. So, your computer could get a virus once you open the infected Office document. Hackers also used another trick where, in fact, a regular exe file was disguised for a Word or Excel document or an archive. When you clicked it, an actual executable would be downloaded and started. However, this is hardly possible with web-based mail clients of today. There was also a time when viruses infected USB drives. The mechanism that allowed them to get into your system was called AutoRun. The feature, first introduced in Windows 95, was originally intended to simplify the process of software installation for non-technical users and allowed the programmer to automatically launch any executable whose name was specified in a file called AutoRunInf once a user inserted the medium. Naturally, the feature became exploited by hackers because it was enabled by default on any Windows computer, hence being a perfect way to inject malware. In Windows Vista, however, for security purposes, Microsoft introduced a new feature that allowed the user to select the desired action for a newly inserted medium, and if you chose the option Take No Action, the virus would simply fail to start. While the AutoRun attack is really a very simple one, a study conducted in 2011 found that as much as 26% of all malware infections were due to the hackers exploiting the AutoRun feature in Microsoft Windows. And because this type of attack is virtually impossible with modern Windows versions, there is quite a remarkable variation to it, which is called USB keyboard exploit or USB jacker. As we know, modern keyboards and mice utilize USB interface to connect to your computer. A USB keyboard translates your keystrokes to USB data packets that represent press and release events for each key, which are then converted to corresponding character codes and sent to the computer. Because USB keyboard standard is an open one, it's called HID, Human Interface Devices, a hacker can build a tiny emulator circuit, which will appear as a USB keyboard to the computer. Once inserted into a USB port, this device will release a series of pre-programmed keystrokes to the computer, typing in commands necessary to download and install a virus. Such emulator can be disguised as a USB cable, USB flash drive, USB camera, or any other USB gadget you can imagine. So, by using this technique, hackers gain virtually full access to your system and can perform any action as though they were physically using your computer in person. I have recorded a separate video that explains how USB emulators work in detail. You can find a link to it in the description. Shockingly, for the time being, there isn't any known way to block this type of attacks, because your PC cannot differentiate between an actual USB keyboard and a keyboard emulator. In fact, an emulator is a legitimate keyboard design-wise. For now, external keyboard and mouse support is turned on by default in any operating system, including macOS, Linux, and Android, not to mention Windows. If it weren't, you wouldn't have been able to type anything on your own keyboard. Tell you more. In fact, the USB emulator does not need an OS to operate. It starts owning your computer the moment it's turned on. It can meddle with your BIOS settings, initiate motherboard firmware updates, format hard drives, and so on. Vendors are yet to come up with a way of identifying and blocking such attacks. So, if you find a stray USB device in a cafe, better not plug it into your computer. A worm is not exactly a virus, because it does not use an executable file as a host. Instead, it functions as a standalone exe, which usually resides in some temporary folder on your system. What's really remarkable is how worms spread. The method, in fact, was borrowed from nature. Many natural parasites use birds as their definitive host. However, before they get there, they infect fish. Once such fish is eaten by a bird, the worms reach their target. There, parasites reproduce themselves, and once released into water, infect another generation of fish. From that point, the sequence repeats. A computer worm also uses multiple stages to reach its targets. First, it gets onto a victim's computer using a browser vulnerability. The worm downloads and installs itself. Once resident on a victim's computer, the malware starts to scan external IP addresses, looking for web servers that have known vulnerabilities. When the worm finds such a server, which is, mind you, not a regular home PC but a professional dedicated device, it hacks into it and modifies its behavior to make it inject malicious code to all web pages it serves to the end user. From now on, the infected machine starts delivering malicious code to everyone who visits the websites it hosts, once again infecting them through a browser vulnerability. From that point, the sequence repeats. So, what do viruses actually do, except replicate itself on as many computers as possible? Based on behavior, malware can be divided into several categories. As the name suggests, spyware attempts to steal certain types of data, usually credit card numbers, crypto private keys, stored passwords, and so on. To achieve that, it scans your hard drive and memory and constantly monitors your clipboard. It also records all your keystrokes and mouse moves. Spyware uses certain algorithms to search for specific patterns, like 16-digit numbers, which is what a credit card number is, or character sequences to identify typed-in passwords. Spyware can also modify your clipboard and replace data. For example, a Bitcoin wallet number can be replaced by another one belonging to the scammer. When you copy-paste your wallet address onto a crypto exchange website or a hardware wallet application, the coins actually end up in the hacker's account. Some types of spyware also target websites of certain financial institutions. Once you log into your banking or brokerage account and create an order, malware modifies form data by adding an extra transaction to benefit the hacker. And if the hacker is not too greedy, this could go on unnoticed for months. Data collected by spyware can also be used for marketing purposes or sold online. A botnet is simply a very large array of randomly infected home and office computers around the globe, controlled by the same hacker or hacker group. In case you didn't know, bot stands for robot. Once upon a time, I had been working on my computer when my firewall popped up a warning telling me a process with a weird name attempted an outgoing TCP connection on port 6667. That's weird, I thought. That is the port used by Internet Relay Chat, which is an online instant messaging system that was popular at that time. So what I did was fire up an IRC client and connect to the IP and port my firewall reported. What I saw there was quite remarkable. Multiple remote hosts were reporting their status in a chat window. Yep, that happened to be the Botnet coordination center. What really surprised me is that the hacker was lame enough to not set a password for the channel, so I could easily get in. I wasn't sure if any live person was in there, so I just typed, "Hey guys, what are you up to?" And I got a reply. "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" I told him I saw an app on my system attempt a connection to his host, so I was there. He laughed and told me it was really cool indeed. Then he said, "Tell me your IP and I will disable the rootkit on your computer." And he did. And then he said, "Run the latest Dr. Web antivirus, it will take care of the rest." So what are the botnets used for? In most cases, it's email spam. Wait, but wouldn't it make more sense to mass send from dedicated servers that are much more powerful and robust than regular PCs? Indeed, it would. But servers have fixed IP addresses, which means an email provider can easily block them by IP. Also, such activity would be highly discouraged by the majority of data centers. However, if you exploit a random computer on a regular DSL connection to send spam, it gets very hard to block, because home users have dynamic IPs, meaning they often change. Also, with a botnet, you get an opportunity to send lots of spam in parallel from around the globe. Spam sending is probably the largest part of malware industry and is a great way for hackers to monetize infected hosts. Botnets, however, are also used to carry out DDoS attacks, which stands for Distributed Denial of Service. The idea behind DDoS is very simple. Any host, be it website or a mail provider or whatever online service, has a certain number of simultaneous inbound connections it can accept, limited by its physical capacity. Of course, large corporations like Apple or Google use clustered server structures to level load and provide 100% uptime. But smaller companies cannot afford that. So, if you just point a large number of computers around the globe to a certain server and tell them to repeatedly connect to it, which is by the way called hammering, the server will be overflown with requests and will go offline. The only thing that can be done in this situation is blocking intruders by their IP. But first, it's physically impossible because they are too many. Second, blocking assumes sorting and filtering, which is also a computational task and requires CPU power, and you simply don't have it. And if the DDoS attack is really massive and performed by a large-scale botnet, it can comprise problems even for large corporations. The only effective way of confronting it would be seizing the intruder and stopping their activity. DDoS attacks are often done for ransom in an attempt to extort money from an organization or an individual. This type of malware is yet another variation of spam that evolved from the idea of the so-called link exchanges. Back in the day, to rank a website, search engines would count the number of external links that pointed to the website in question. The larger the number, the more popular the website must be with the users. While the original idea was brilliant and simple, once webmasters figured how it worked, they immediately started to abuse it. What they would do is ask other webmasters to create additional links that pointed to their website, thus tricking the search engines to give them a higher ranking. Naturally, search giants like Google and Yahoo highly discouraged such activity, but it took them a while to adjust their algorithms to counter this behavior. And before they did, some crafty website promotion firms started offering a paid service of mass link placement. But instead of paying webmasters to do it, they would utilize a worm that created an unthinkable amount of bogus posts containing links to the promoted websites on boards and forums. Internet became literally contaminated with search spam, and webmasters had to introduce the CAPTCHA feature, which is actually the acronym for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to tell computers and humans apart, to stop it. Hit the like button now if you didn't know it. Spammers, however, found a way around that too. They would infect a user's browser and inject a script that placed a link to a promoted website within the message body to make it appear as though it had been actually typed and posted by a real person. Naturally, CAPTCHA wouldn't work in this case, and infected posts successfully made it online. Instead of emptying people's crypto wallets, at some point, hackers came up with a smarter way of monetizing infected hosts. They would secretly mine on people's computers. What's important to know about mining is that it requires a lot of processor power, so the more CPU time you manage to steal, the more crypto you can make. So, hackers started infecting users' computers with invisible background apps that were set up to mine in hackers' benefit. There also existed a variation of cryptojacking where mining was done through the browser. That was either due to the website owner placing mining scripts in their HTML code or a server-hosted virus injecting them to all web pages served to the users. Here's how to find out if your computer is actually performing a mining operation. Note your CPU load, temperature, and fan speed. If they go up for no apparent reason, your PC may have been infected. If so, you can open the Windows Task Manager and check the running processes. If you see a task that uses a lot of CPU or especially GPU power, that could be your secret miner. And the last type we're going to be discussing today is ransomware. This is probably the vilest and nastiest type of malware that exists on Earth. Ransomware blocks access to your computer until a sum of money is paid to the hacker. Well, who cares? You could still pull your hard disk out of the drive bay and access your data on another computer, right? Wrong. Ransomware not only freezes your OS, it also encrypts your hard disks. Encryption in computer science is a method of ciphering data so that it becomes totally unusable unless you have a secret key necessary to decipher it. And for someone who does not have that key, it means that the data is locked forever. And unfortunately, no computer security specialist can help with that. Unless, of course, the hacker was lame enough to use a flawed encryption algorithm, which can be reversed without the secret key, or the secret key was somehow leaked by the hacker. Okay, let us sum up what we arrived at until now. Always back up sensitive data. For backups, use an alternative media, like an external USB hard disk or online storage. Do not install software from unknown sources. When you download from App Store or Google Play, always recheck the vendor, user feedback, and download count. Do not follow links that arrive in your email. If they claim to be from a bank or investment firm or IRS, pick up the phone, dial the number, and find out. If you really need to visit a controversial website, do not do it from your work computer. Use a notebook that doesn't have any sensitive data. Always keep your software up to date, especially your operating system. When entering credit card data, always recheck the name and spelling of the website in the browser address bar. Utilize strong passwords. It's always a good idea to use a mix of letters, symbols, and numbers for a password. Remember, Passwords should not contain your name, your pet's name, or any word you can find in a dictionary. I personally prefer to use made-up words. It's easy to remember them because they make sense to you, yet they are strong in terms of a dictionary attack. Do not plug any USB device or media you found in a public place into your computer. Never leave your devices unattended. The physical security is just as important as technical security. Always lock your device's screen when not in use. And finally, install an antivirus. You can check the links in the description for some decent antivirus software. This was Ron Martino. Please leave your comments below, and don't forget to share this video on social media and subscribe to the channel. Stay safe, stay healthy.